what sparked your initial interest in leadership and organizational development?
Okay, as a kid, I was always interested in actually popularity. Not being popular, although I mean maybe like the way every other people are, like it's good. It's not a bad thing to be liked and to have people know you and be glad to see you. And then I would see the behaviors of the other kids, like what would they do to become popular or be liked? And wow, they're really selling out, or I wouldn't necessarily have that thought. I would be impressed, not necessarily positively, but notice what other people do. And so that woke me up to social dynamics. Now, when that happened too, I also started to go, well, what's the opposite of the social dynamics? That's how my brain, I guess, always worked. Like I like distinctions, and so what? So introspection became equally interesting to me as popularity. And it's almost like two ends. Like the popularity is the social aspect of the world outside of you, and then introspection is maybe, I don't know what thoughts I had around it, but basically that's the real world. That's the one that like is less polluted with all sorts of maybe like footprints, like if you're trying to, like if you have snow and it's pristine, but then you got all these people with their footprints around it, well then it's not as. And so that's how I saw society. And I was like, some behaviors were really nice and some behaviors were really jerky, and sometimes the nice behaviors got punished and the jerky behaviors got rewarded. It was all confusing to me, but I think that always made me sensitive to it. And it wasn't until college that I started to actually really get involved. And I had a teacher who did something really unusual in this day, created a class on leadership. That didn't really exist in I guess that was around 1990, 91. And so I started watching the videos of people like Tom Peters, who was in the 80s and 90s was probably one of the leading management experts. Very charismatic, compelling speaker, would go research companies and show you these inspiring stories of this manager who turned this thing around by believing in people, or this person who created this amazing customer service experience that was just blew people's minds, that then they brought other people with them, and it became that distinguishing advantage. You cover things like, how did Harley Davidson turn around their company because their motorcycles were just spitting out oil and nobody would buy their motorcycles, and then they really changed their culture around and internally, and then that led to these results. Well, that's power to me. When I saw stories like that, I'm like, okay, I mean, like I grew up watching wrestling and Hulk Hogan, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm like, that's not power. This is really power. Somebody organizes the wrestling bouts for, Macho Man Randy Savage to show up, right? And so what's going on behind the scenes? And that's organizational dynamics. And I didn't know that, and I didn't know it was a field I could study. And that's something I'm trying to change too. I try to get, like, I work with high school students and college students, and I try to get them excited about this field of organizational dynamics, and they do. This is fun for them, when you show them a way to go about an activity that works, people enjoy that, and this is an important activity, being able to run an organization, whether you call it leadership or authority. Being an organization is extremely important. So where would you go to learn that? They don't really teach it well in school. Our teachers don't know it. Our principals don't know it. And then what they do learn from it can also be dangerous, because it loads them up with these ideas that make them think, oh, I already know it. I know leadership. I know it. And they really don't, because they're learning ideas that actually they don't really distinguish leadership. They confuse. Now, I'll talk about this for just a second. I mean, in academia, they're confused about the difference between leadership and authority. They will say, well, the research says this, but you look at the research, go, well, who are you researching? Who are you studying in these studies? And you read, they're studying managers, they're studying C-suite people, they're studying principals in schools, they're studying military officers. And so don't look at the research findings, look at the research subjects. who's being studied. And what you see is people being studied are those who have positions of authority. And so when we study them and draw conclusions, we say, oh, we're drawing these conclusions about leadership, but we're not. Because there's nothing other that included the people in the study than their position in a hierarchy. That's why they were included. It said so in the subject line. We studied blank, 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 blank. So many so-and-sos, so many managers, so many this. And so what's important to take from that is that our conclusions, our academic conclusions about leadership may more accurately be described as conclusions about authority. So that's why it's important for people to not just go by what's taught about in the academic institutions either. It's really dangerous that people come to their leadership positions thinking they already know it. And then here's this: if they were to be humble about it, if they were to say, I want to learn, I want to know, people would go, oh, well, then you shouldn't have this position.